Shout out to Baby Smack.
Yeah. Lil Looney.
Real niggas don't gotta act.
6-0.
What up, YouTube? Today we'll be profiling Lil Looney of the Rollin 60 Crips.
Welcome to another episode, KM Videos, true stories.
I get my bone on, you know what I'm saying?
Cruising down the street in my city car.
Oh, I hit front, back, side to side.
For my love, my dog, the pimp, the hog.
Check it out.
Had this dope, sweatshirt and low soul.
That was it. I never stopped banging. I started banging hard, then I got so hard till it was a shame.
Welcome to another episode of KM Videos, true stories.
So what does Lil Looney got to do with Overhills then?
One of the mainframes of the Overhills, the architect of the Overhills.
Lil Looney was an architect, a friend, and a leader. On January 7th, 1968, Earl Arthur Wilson was conceived to the proud parents of Frank and Lorraine Wilson in Chicago, Illinois. The Wilsons stayed about 4 blocks away from the Rogers family on the south side of Chicago. On April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Though King had recently moved out of Chicago in 1967, anger and grief caused tension in Chicago to boil over, and riots erupted in portions of the city. During the afternoon of Friday, April 5th, rioters took to the streets on the west side of Chicago. Shortly after, the Wilson family would relocate to the city of Los Angeles. Earl's father was born in the state of Louisiana, and in 1942 he joined the U.S. Navy and participated in World War II. He was discharged in 1946 and moved to Chicago in 1950. After making that move over 2,000 miles away from the south side of Chicago to the west side of Los Angeles, in 1974, the Wilsons will purchase a home on the 6,000 block of Eileen Avenue, just north of the Inglewood border. They resided in a unique portion of the city of Los Angeles, just a few houses away from the city of Inglewood and just a few blocks from the county of Los Angeles. In 1975, Earl Arthur Wilson attended 54th Street Elementary, located south of Slauson Avenue. Then later, Orville Wright Junior High, Horseman Junior High, Crenshaw High School, and Whitney Young Continuation. It's safe to say, Earl was well known in the neighborhood. During his elementary school years, Earl was known to chase the girls around the school campus. He also used to like to take his shoes off and run around the track. He took pride in being one of the fastest students in elementary school. Earl was often defiant and tardy when it came to leaving school and going straight home. Though he came from a very disciplined, 2-parent strict household, Earl wanted to stay after school and play on the playground. He was a down youngster for his age, and in 1978, he began calling himself Earl Dog. A year or so later, he would take on the moniker Lil Looney, named after the OG homie, Big Looney. Big Looney came from the back part of the neighborhood, in which was called the Back Hood. The back of the hood is located west of Crenshaw Boulevard, and at one point, it went all the way to Fox Hills. LAPD labeled the gang from Western Avenue to Fox Hills. Fox Hills is a neighborhood of Culver City, California. It's roughly triangular in shape, bounded by West Lawson Avenue to the north, Centinela Avenue on the south, the San Diego Freeway to the southwest, and Canterbury Drive to the southeast. Fox Hills will become most known for the Fox Hills Mall and the residency of a lot of Los Angeles Laker players. Earl was always helping others or lending a kind word, often very humorous, just to make you laugh or smile. Hoping your troubles would soon be over and that light at the end of the tunnel would always seem a whole lot brighter. Earl stood for strength. He was a family man, always wishing, wanting, and living life to the fullest. In the early 80s, Earl used to pop lock, and he loved oldies. Earl never switched up on his classmates or the civilians in the neighborhood, and he was always very well respectful towards everyone's parents. If you considered yourself a gangbanger, then his approach was a little different. He was always up for a challenge. And one of the more distinguishable things about him, he was about his cripping. Lil Looney had Crip written all over him. His walk, his talk, his dress style, and his actions. He could switch it up and dress real preppy and still get his Crip on. In 1983, Lil Looney caught a case in the hood in which he would be offered an out-of-state release. He could go out of town for 1 year, and if he did good, he could come back home. He chose to move with his aunt in Seattle, Washington. While Lil Loon was living in Seattle, one of his neighbors and close friends, Lil Maniac, was killed. Earl was allowed to return home in the summer of 1984, less than a couple weeks after Lil Maniac was killed. And his favorite pastimes, he liked to go to Magic Mountain every 4th of July, high school football games on Fridays. However, he never went to watch the games. Oscars on Saturdays, of course he wasn't going to dance, and World on Wheels on Sundays. Wherever it was said there would be a fight or a rumble, Earl was going to be there. Lil Looney had a lot of love for a lot of older homies that paved the way, such as Lil Mump, OG Banker T, and many more. But in August, after the Alexander murders, Lil Looney was one of the first homies to tattoo Lil Fee across his neck. He enrolled at Crenshaw High School for the 1984-85 school year, but he only lasted a few weeks before he got into a fight with the Kitchen Crips.
So let me ask you something. When you came back in 85, you landed on top of the hill at Mom's house, right?
Yes.
Was this area sectioned off as the Overhills back then?
Yes. Yes.
It already had its name.
It already had its name.
Before you left what they call this area, did it have a section off name?
Well, we were always in the 70s known as the Overhills.
Really?
Yeah. But it wasn't a name that was embraced. It was times me and Miles was on Arlington. Here come them Overhill kids. Here come them rich kids.
Back in 74, 75, they were saying that?
75, 76.
In 1986, Big Earl Dog, aka Lil Looney, gave himself a new moniker, Big Ripper. Big Ripper would catch a case for shooting at a border enemy. He went to YA for a 90-day observation. That just wasn't going to work. Lil Looney was sent to Tracy Prison in 1986 at age 18. Lil Looney was laced by Big Key Rock on how to do prison time, how to survive, and how to be respectful toward enemies. This picture right here was taken in 1988 at Tracy Prison. There's Lil Looney with Big Key Rock, a Trey 5'7", a Pomino Gangster Crip, and original Front Hood Compton. Earl paroled in 1988 and was back on the block. He came up with an idea to change the name Back Hood to Overhills. But first, he had to put his leadership skills to test, and he started recruiting. A lot of his peers was away in prison, but the OGs in the neighborhood had a lot of love and respect for Lil Looney and his movement. He turned or influenced taggers and preppy gangs to become part of the Rollin 60s. Two things that wasn't never gonna change: he wasn't gonna allow no busters from Rollin 60s, and he wasn't gonna go for no resistance. A lot of young homies and new recruits that hung or lived around Lil Looney decided to go up to Stocker Park on a hot summer day. They had just returned from an altercation with some Crip gang members from West LA when a car filled with suspected gang members pulled up, opened fire, killing baby Crazy Boy and injuring another homie. Police said this was the first killing since the 3-day truce between Crips and Bloods citywide. According to police, the gunman shot up to 15 shots before speeding away. It was thought that the shooters were members of the Bloods, and the possible motive was the 60s drifted too far away from their turf, not far from the jungle. In 1989, he caught a case for beating a guy from KOD with a bat and went back to prison on a violation. He ended up in Donovan prison.
I took her back to a rival, now I got a charge. Donovan prison, me and Teaspoon up in the yard. Baby slipped there too and no smut on my name. Real Cripper for the set, I'm a beast in the game. 89, now I'm back and I started my clique. I couldn't think a name for it till memories hit. I was a teen up in juvie and watching the movie. A cowboy flick influenced the name that I'm choosing. Overhills 6-0 and we pushing our line. Crenshaw the Fox Hills, remembered in time. Lil Looney, remember the time. Real niggas from the city, they never would die. Lil Looney, remember the time. Real niggas from the city, they never would die. Lil Looney, remember the time. Real niggas from the city, they never would die. Lil Looney, remember the time. Real niggas from the city, they never would die. They say before Overhills was Back Hood.
I go with that.
And at some point in time, Earl flipped it over to Overhills. Is that your recollection?
I mean, I got that when I came home. Like, what's the Overhill? How we get the Overhill from Back Hood? The sectioning off of Front Hood, Avenues, BGs. The Overhills, the Overhills was a more representation of just the back. It had a hell of a name, Overhills. When Earl paroled from R.J. Donovan State Prison, he put a meeting together at Ladera Park and invited allies. And in came the Overhills.
With the coming of the new guard, the numbers began to swell. The quality and the recognition continued to grow. Not everybody was ready for change. Everybody didn't get on board and accept the name until later on. Before he went back on his violation, Big Smurf gave him the new name Big Scooter because he seen him dancing like a bumperhead, a new wave trendy gang dance. Lil Looney fell in love with the 1987 hit by Boogie Down Productions, Criminal Minded, so he started calling himself Big Criminal. Looney loved to go down to Crenshaw Boulevard on Sundays to either run enemies off or catch him a female. From his long, healthy perm to a straight bald head, he was a ladies' man. For the younger homies coming up, they loved Lil Looney. By now, his understudies, Little Earl Dog, Lil Ripper, Lil Krim, all had big names and reputations from the hood. Lil Looney was killed in November of 1990. Since then, the back of the turf has been experiencing gentrification. The same corners where gang members threw up gang signs in the 1970s and 80s, you can find white women pushing babies in strollers in the 2000s. Rest in peace to a young street legend, Lil Looney.